Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the We Build Black Mavens IO conference, the virtual edition. I am Danielle Skeen. I'm going to be your MC and moderator today. If you joined us on Monday for the first panel, I know you left with a lot of gems, right? We should have told you to bring a bag because you were going to collecting a lot of gems. I know that I did. We talked about navigating through the chaos. Our panelists gave us some amazing tips on how to really navigate and deal with our new normal in the COVID age. And as we transition into today, we're going to talk about really what's next, right? What's next in this new era? What's next in your new career when you think of management and just progressing? But as usual, before we get into business, we definitely want to hear from our sponsor. So today's sponsor that you're going to hear from is LeafLink. And our main rep that's going to kick us off is going to be Janelle Harper. So Janelle, go ahead and take it away.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Janelle, and I am on the employer branding team here at LeafLink. And here joining me from our team today is Jana Janathri, our Director of Talent Acquisition and Employer Branding, and Ria, our Lead Technical Recruiter. So together, we are really excited to support and be a part of this year's Mavens IO Black Women's in Tech Conference by We Build Black. And so at LeafLink, we provide the largest unified B2B platform to support business needs of regulated brands in the cannabis industry. And we provide some seamless wholesale ordering through our marketplace, create supply chain financing, payments options, and streamline logistics to make it easier for customers to ship, track, and deliver orders. In addition, we also offer data analytics and marketing products that rethink the way that businesses really build their brand awareness. And so LeafLink recognizes that the long and intersectional history between the Black community and the effects of criminalization of marijuana and social justice issues are still prevalent today. And we understand there's a lot of work to be done in the industry, and we're consciously taking action in that work. But in order for us to continue to strengthen our organization, it is necessary for us to achieve a goal of creating an equitable and inclusive cannabis industry. It's imperative that we build our community both internally and externally. Therefore, we are committed to diversifying our organization at all levels, creating space, providing seats at the table for stronger representation and advocacy. And at LeafLink, we strive for transparency. We say it straight. We want all of our employees to be engaged, empowered to lead, feel heard, feel seen, and continue to give us feedback on what we're doing well and what we can do better. So speaking of LeafLinkers, there's an extreme amount of gratitude to be given to one of our very own, who's also the co-founder of We Build Black, Devin Jackson. We are super, super proud to support the work that Devin is in and holding this space for women that are supporting one another, navigating challenges, and growing their leadership skills for what's next in their careers. So can we give some snaps, a round of applause real quick for Devin? Yes, thank you. Thank you. And on that note, if you're ready to take the next steps with LeafLink, we'd love to have you. Again, Ria and Janathri and myself will be here and looking forward to chatting with you. So we're grateful to learn, to listen, and be inspired by this panel and virtual room full of talented, accomplished, amazing Black women. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Don't forget those jobs. Talk about those jobs.
Y'all hiring?
Yes, Ria was going to take it away with some of our top roles that we're currently looking for.
Awesome. Thank you, Janelle. I'm so excited to be here with you guys tonight. LeafLink is hiring across a lot of different roles. In engineering specifically, we have a few opportunities that I'm very excited about right now. One of those opportunities is an engineering manager position on our platform team, which is a really great leadership opportunity on our team. And another one is in our integrations pod, also within platform. So if you're a back-end engineer looking forward to kind of growing your skill set and integrations, that's a really good opportunity. And then on the infrastructure side, we have some DevOps opportunities as well. But that's not all we have. I encourage you to check out our careers page or connect with me or any of our team on LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to have a chat and explore opportunities with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the LeafLink team. And ladies, if you're listening and you're looking for a job, even if you're not looking for a job, go check them out, right? I think it's one of those things, especially when you think about the cannabis industry and just the negative history that our people have had. We are now getting opportunities to be at the forefront in new and unique ways. So definitely take advantage. It is a hot market right now. And you guys heard it first on the Mavens IO conference. So make sure you check them out. Now, speaking of jobs and progressing and kind of, doing the damn thing, if you will, I have an amazing lineup of women here that we're going to hear from for about the next hour or so. Last week, or Monday rather, we talked about navigating the chaos. Today, we're going to talk about what's next, right? What are the possibilities? What is next for you? So what I'm going to do is stop talking, because it's not about me, it's about them. And what I'll do is I'll have each lady here introduce yourself while then answering the first question. So just let us know who you are, the company you're representing, your title. And then the question is, what were your motivations to get into technology? And, how has that differed, or has it essentially continued to remain the same? So I'm going to eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I'm going to have Christine kick us off. We got the same red lips, so my eyes went to you.
I had to show out. So good afternoon, everyone. Good evening for those of us on the East Coast. I am Christine Mitchell. I'm a senior engineering leader here at Netflix. I support all things marketing technology. So all of the tech that gets people super excited about our content that they sign up and watch. So ads that you see on the radio or TV, billboards that you see on the street, anything on social media platforms, and even all of the promotional material on the service itself. My team globally supports the technology that helps distribute that and gets people really excited about our content at Netflix. Now, to answer the first question about what got me involved in technology, I actually come from a non-traditional background. I don't have a bachelor's degree, and I really wanted to make money. So I was going to be an accountant, and I looked at the starting salaries of a CPA versus the starting salaries of software engineers. And I said, I can make a lot of money in technology. So I started on this path because I simply wanted to make money. I like to solve problems. I was really good at math, and I was lucky to come up during the time when there was a shortage of software engineers. So there was an opportunity for me to step into this field, and I've been there ever since. I'm an old lady in this game, so I've been in engineering for a really, really long time. But basically, that's what got me excited about engineering and technology.
I love that. And are the motivations still the same, right? Are we still trying to get some more dollars, or has that changed since, you've been in the technology industry?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a little bit different now. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I made a good amount of money. What I'm really trying to do now, which is why I'm participating in events like this, is to get more people that look like us in this industry. There are so many people that are consuming technology, specifically Black people that are consuming technology, that are not part of creating the platforms that afford all of us a large amount of money. And so really my motivation is to get more people interested in technology. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to have a bachelor's degree. You just have to love solving problems, breaking down problems, and loving to learn. And as long as you're willing to do that, there's a place for you in this industry. So I'm super passionate about letting people know that there are people like me that exist, that like hardcore distributed systems, backend APIs. I've been doing it for over 20 years, so it wasn't something I got into and then was so beat up that I got out of. There is a place for you here. And so my motivation is to continue to be an ambassador in this industry, to get more of us at companies like Netflix, Facebook, Google, where we can materially change the station of our lives, our economic status, and really contribute to the growth of technology, especially since we're driving so much of it as a consumer.
Love that. Love that. I'm excited to hear more about what you have to share with us today. So thanks for being here. Anisha, you can go next.
Yeah. First of all, this is an amazing first answer to the question, amazing kickoff. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Anisha Rains. I am the head of engineering at O1 Labs. In O1 Labs, what we do is we are the team that incubated the MUNIT protocol, incubated and launched this year. So very excited about that. And yeah, I started in technology, or what motivated me to get into technology is really, I grew up in Detroit. And we started off with a kind of a weekend program designed to bring people into STEM. And I started doing that because that's, I found it fun and was introduced to my first programming language, COBOL. I'm also an old lady in the game. So, and really loved building things. So it's kind of the traditional story. This happened in middle school, and I ended up going all the way through high school in tech and college, and really just love the idea and the practice of crafting something from nothing to do what you want, and solving complex and societal and kind of cultural problems with this technology. And part of your question too was, has that changed? And has changed a little bit. Like, it's still fun for me to build things, but really my motivation has shifted away from like building things to how do we do this in a way that's holistic and well for everyone. Like the industry itself sometimes can be a little toxic, especially for women, especially for women of color. And so my focus has changed from how do I build an organization to accomplish this goal, especially since tech is not going anywhere. Tech is how we are going to change, continue to make like advancements in everything that we do. So how do we do it in a way that's sustainable to the person, to the human, and especially for people of color, especially for women of color in the workplace. So that is my advocacy, and that is kind of my passion as we go forward. So yeah.
I love that. And I think you touched on some key points too, right? I think between both you and Christine, I feel like over the past few years, decades, right? When we think of tech and even in the engineering function, it's kind of pivoted from just focusing on this product, right? Building the thing to actually really truly solving real life problems and issues, and then coming back to the technology piece. So it's interesting to hear, what you both had to share there. And last but certainly not least, we're going to have Tanika go ahead and kick us off with who she is, as well as what motivated her to get into tech.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanika. I am a director of data science and people analytics I'm actually at US Navy. And I entered into tech really, I stumbled in, thought I wanted to do nursing more so because my mom wanted me to be a nurse. So I thought that's what I wanted to be because it was just always ingrained in me and that's what I saw. But I took all of the time that we're all on a computer and we were creating our MySpace profiles and didn't know that we were coding back then. We were just trying to make everything look nice. But I learned that I'm just a natural problem solver. If I can't figure anything out, I'll Google my way through it. And I can just continue that. I had a really great instructor in college who actually helped me figure out that maybe I didn't enjoy nursing, but I more so like technology, and I needed to figure out what in technology specifically did I like. So I've stayed in tech because there's just an array of problem solving that can happen. I really do enjoy trying to fix things in general, just taking a problem and understanding, well, why did this happen? How do we prevent this from happening in the future? What can we do now to resolve it? And that is so applicable across so many verticals. And that's why I started in consulting, because I wanted to learn so much about different industries and different organizations. I had a good mentor and my first internship who kind of told me that consulting was probably going to be the best way for you to figure out what you wanted to do. And it was. So I started it as a business systems analyst, where I essentially just solved problems from a system perspective and built data models there. But then I wanted to tackle more problems. I found out, well, the systems aren't the problem. You really need the reports, and you want to report out and talk to your leadership team, and the leadership wants to report out to everyone what's going on, what is the status of all of the funding and where our tax dollars are going. So that is where I ended up saying, I think I wanted it to be in reporting and analytics, and I continued on that path and built a lot of relationships along the way and continued to just kind of hone in on those relationships while I was also continuously learning. I tell people all the time, no matter what level I'm at, I continuously learn and grow. I just did a data science fellowship last year. I'm a TA for the same fellowship as well, but it's because I learned that when I teach, I learn so much more than when I'm actually in the classroom and I'm taking in the knowledge. But when I have to help other people figure it out, it tests you on a different level. So I encourage everyone to continue in that path. And I think that it's one of the biggest passions of mine, not only teaching, but sharing resources as well, because I don't want anyone to run into what I call the gatekeepers of tech and the gatekeepers of industry.
They're out
They are very much out there, and I ran into them a lot in college, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing resources and getting people into the door or into a conversation.
Nice, nice. So we have all been officially introduced. So you know the panelists, you know what they're about, where they work, and really what has driven them to be in the roles now. And you heard a lot of directors and senior managers, and they've got teams, right? So when all of you think about basically your management journey. We have quite a few people who are on here. So some may be thinking about moving forward in their careers, not really sure what to do next. Maybe they're thinking about being managers, but not quite sure if it's a fit for them. So curious to hear from each of you, because I know no story is the same. There is not one, true path to getting to, these levels. Can each of you just share with us, what was your journey like getting to where you are right now? And just any gems that you can share for folks who are tuning in now that might be a little bit curious, but also cautious in how they're moving. Let's do Christine to start this one.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really, really interesting question. And so for me, how I started or got into management is, I mentioned I don't come from a traditional background, so I really wanted to hone my craft, but I also had a knack of communicating really well and being able to take really complex technical problems and explain them to non-technical audiences. So throughout my career, I was always being pushed to lead teams because a lot of my managers felt that I would be able to represent what our teams were doing to all of the business teams that we were supporting. But as I mentioned, I stayed as a software engineer for a really, really long time because I wanted to hone my craft. Eventually, when I was at CNBC, I fell into management because we were relaunching CNBC.com. We didn't have a really large team. Again, I was helping to bridge the gaps between the business users and the technical teams. And just logically, people started basically looking towards my leadership. So I was unofficially a leader until I became a leader, and I kind of fell into it by accident. What I tell people that I mentor when they're making a determination as to whether they want to move into the people leadership track is that you really have to think about whether you have the capacity to have empathy to support others, and whether you're comfortable with walking away from the problem solving and the day-to-day tactical needs of software engineering, because they're foundationally a different job. As a people leader, my job is to hire great people. Once I hire them, keep them super motivated about what they're doing, provide them context and the resources that they need to get their job done. And oh, by the way, really support them in their growth path. And that's a very, very different role than basically working cross-functionally with your team members to solve problems, leveraging technology solutions to address the needs of the business. And so you have to really be passionate about people leadership or software engineering if you want to make the decision to stay in one realm or the other. Now, the other kind of misconception people have is that the only way you can make money is if you become a people leader. So in some cases, people aren't passionate about leading people, but hey, I want to be a vice president because I want to make, VP money. Luckily enough, in this industry, there are paths where you can make as much money as a VP or a CTO or more as an individual contributor. And so really, if your motivation is to make money, and that's why you're thinking that you need to move into leadership, that's probably not the right decision for you. If the decision to move into leadership is because you want to grow others, you want to create a space to bring in others like yourself into the organization, if you really want to connect teams and have them work together in support of the business that they're passionate about, then that makes the right determination for you to move into leadership. So just really think about your motivations in terms of whether you want to be a people leader, whether you want to make more money, whether you're more passionate about software engineering. Those should all be facets that help you determine whether you should move into leadership leadership or not. Now, luckily for me, I'm passionate about software engineering, but when I moved into leadership, I was able to stay hands-on. It's only been the last probably 3 years of my career. Even when I was a VP, I was still very much hands-on, but now at Netflix and some of the other companies that I've worked at, I have not been able to be hands-on. So I am truly in that people leadership path right now. And that's a little bit about my journey into management. A bit rambling, but just, again, trying to provide context for
Not
people
rambling at all.
make a determination as to whether it's the right fit for them. And it's not only about money, should not be your motivator, because you can make a lot of money as an individual contributor. So really think about it as you're making that choice to move into leadership or to stay doing what you're doing and what you're passionate about.
I love that you added that motivators part to the end of it, because that was going to be my little pile-on. Like, everything you said is spot on, but I do think that there is this misconception that if you are trying to, move up the ladder, management has to happen. Even if it's temporary, then you go into a next role. And I think a lot of companies these days, that's not the case, right? And I would say be self-aware, right? If you're thinking about it, not everyone has the patience or the empathy to be an effective manager, right? Sometimes in some companies, and you're experiencing it now, Christine, you're not touching the product really at all. So that might be a shock in and of itself to you in that role. So just really analyze, are you ready to do this and kind of be a true people leader, people manager? And are you okay with not having to touch or be close to the product any longer, right? That might sway you to move in one direction or another. If you're like you, where you could do both, then that might be a win-win.
Yeah, and I'll add one last thing to that. I know for a lot of us, especially being Black women in this industry, there's a lot of preconceived notions about what our capabilities are, right? Like, are you really a program manager, or do you actually write code, right? Like, can you, like, are you distributing efficient code? Are you at the same level, at the same quality bar as everybody else that's been hired into the organization? So a lot of us like to stay being a hands-on engineer, because that's really the only way that we can basically show and prove that we deserve to be there, right? That our code compiles the way that your code compiles. It performs better, probably in most cases, than your code performs, and we're able to solve all of the great technical challenges that our companies are tackling. And so we stay in that realm because it's easy to prove ourselves. Yeah. Don't be afraid when you're not hands-off. When you are hands-off, with being able to prove yourself in a different dimension. So if you really are passionate about people, have empathy, really want to grow teams, but are fearful that people think that you're in that position because you're filling a quota and there's no way to demonstrably prove your skill set, don't let that hold you back. You can prove your skill set. Your teams are going to deliver successfully. You're going to give them the right connections in order for them to be successful. And oh, by the way, you're going to be able to drive the bottom line of the business, which is not tangible per se, because you didn't actually write code to solve a problem, but you're solving a problem in a different dimension. So don't let the fear or the imposter syndrome hold you back if your passion truly is growing teams and growing people and really wanting to be a leader in the organization. So I'll shut up now because I'm a novelist. But I am passionate about that and making sure people don't let their fear hold them back if they do feel that they have the necessary skill to lead the organization or to lead a team or organization.
These are all gems. So thank you for that. And we can have a whole other session on imposter syndrome. We just can't do it today, but we need it. Yeah. But Tanika, let's hear from you. Just, what was your experience in your journey into getting into management?
Yeah, so I started my journey in consulting, and in consulting, you have the opportunity to not only work on so many different projects, but I think what it does bring is the opportunity to shine and become an entrepreneur. I'm originally always going to be probably an entrepreneur at heart, and I come up with different ideas and I think about different ways to execute them, whether that's for a client or for the organization I'm working for as well. So in that, I've led so many different initiatives and projects, and in these projects, I always try to find people who are passionate about the work. I like to align people to their passions because they will produce better products. They will provide better services. So in that, I just kind of unofficially became a leader of these different initiatives, or a leader on a work stream, and then an overall project. And so this continued to grow and challenge other people as well as myself. And I talked about relationship building. My first manager in my career reached back out and said, I've just heard so many great things, and I wanted to see what are your thoughts on coming back and working with me? And that's where I ended up where I am now, where I'm essentially taking my entrepreneurship, taking my consulting skills, my tech skills in data science, and building out this data science organization. Essentially, we're creating a consulting organization within the Navy. So we have the opportunity to do so much, but this all came from what had I done in the past? How have I shown this value in the past? How have I maintained those relationships with different leaders? And it can be so hard to text an old mentor, especially during COVID. You know, you lose track of so many different people throughout your career, but keeping up, you know, once a year, twice a year, just sending a text, you never know how long that will go or how far it will go for you. But I think for me personally, Christine touched on a lot because it really does. I like to be hands-on. I like to code. It gives me drive. I really love it. So when I went into the tech industry, I became an IC, and then I started leading a couple of people. But I was an IC originally, and it was like, oh wow, this is just a breath of fresh air from consulting because I find that I can get more things done. All I have to do is focus on my code. I can get things delivered. It was so different. And I really do encourage anyone who's really focused on just coding and working with code and working with people in coding to just look into individual contributor roles. And people people manager style roles really came from me bringing in that entrepreneurial spirit and leading initiatives and projects where I just wanted to build products and deploy them to our customers or clients. And I just became this unofficial leader at work and in the communities that I'm in. I'm kind of that leader as well. So it's something around talking to people and finding out, well, what are your interests? What are you passionate about? Oh, I saw a resource yesterday. You may be interested in that. Or how can I help you get to where you need to go? How can I help you have that conversation with who you need to speak to at work? You know, how can we talk through tough challenges that you may be having personally or professionally? That's how I ended up in this role. And that passion for people and serving people is within me, but I still have that IC urge, and that's where I still take that. And some of the day I spend just working on different machine learning models with my team and just asking them what they're doing, or if they need any help or support. Do they need a pair programming session? And so that's how I kind of still get that from work. And then outside of work, I do still work on different projects. And like I said, I do try to teach on the weekends as well. And again, echoing everything Christine said, if you don't have a passion for people, it's okay. You can still make a lot of money being an IC, and you can make a lot of money being a people manager, but do what you're passionate about. It was very hard for me to learn that in my career in college, but go with the area that you're most passionate about and the money will come to you.
I love that. Lots of gems so far. I think, you know, what's consistent so far between both of you and your stories, right? It's both of you were already in some form of a leadership capacity before you got that title or that official position, right? So, you know, I think a solid takeaway there is like when you can find those opportunities to step up, lead something, motivate others, you know, definitely take that. The other thing that came about that we have established from the get-go is that management is not the only way that you can, you know, forward in your career, right? Whether it be financially, whether it be, you know, stature, what have you. You don't have to only become a manager first. And then for those of us who like to, you know, be hands-on with code, but you're fearful that I'm going to lose that if I become a manager, but I really love motivating people, there are ways that you can start to implement that in your day-to-day. So Tanika, you talked about having those, you know, sessions where we're going hand to hand, we're helping each other. You can like get your little fix for 20 minutes, but it's not your day-to-day. So I thought that was cool. And then of course, are there opportunities where you can volunteer outside of your job where you can still hone your craft. So awesome takeaways so far. And I know Anisha is going to take us home with her experience and her journey to being a manager.
Yeah, I actually share a lot of similarities in between.
Which is good. At least that
Right.
y'all talking the truth. You guys are speaking
Yep.
truth.
Yep. And it's actually funny because I did not like, it wasn't something that I started out my career thinking I would do. I did not want to lead people. I just kind of wanted to, just do my work, build the things. And it wasn't until my boss went on vacation. Sorry, he went on sabbatical and just did not come back. And so I ended up um, kind of taking over, leading some projects, like a large cross-functional team projects. And that's also kind of a trend for me in my own career. Like I've done it in other roles before that, kind of being like the leader of virtual teams and the leader of teams without actually really having any authority. And in this instance, I did it at a larger scale, and at the same time, I was mentoring more junior engineers, which is also something that I really enjoyed. Like everyone talked about that people growth aspect and really wanting to help people grow in what they want to do and grow in their careers and grow in their skills, and I really enjoyed that part. So when it became clear that my manager was not returning, and they started looking for somebody to take his place, I surprised myself by throwing my hat in the ring. And I kind of, did that by talking to my, my skip level at the time and saying that, hey, this is something that I'm interested in doing. I know I don't have any experience, but I think it would be really beneficial to try this out. And basically convince them to kind of promote me into that role. Yeah, so that's how I got into management. And I think it's worth mentioning too, everyone's kind of talked about that tension, that pull between kind of like the people management and doing the IC work. And at least in my experience, I found that, I started off doing both. When I first moved into management, I still had my IC work because I'm still on the team, and I still had that people management aspect. And that kind of swung back and forth for a few years and across a couple of different jobs, actually, where my focus was on, on either the IC work or the team, but always kind of trying to do both at one time. And not really sure if I wanted to stay. Like I really enjoyed that fulfillment of building something and releasing something and, and developing and working with the team to get that done. And at the same time, I really enjoyed, and truthfully, there's sometimes it's a little challenging as well on both sides. Working with people is always interesting because we're all different. And so I swung back and forth from focus and actually trying to figure out if that's what I wanted to do. And I've actually read multiple times, like this is pretty common. So if people are not sure, that this is something that they want to do, then I highly recommend to just try it out. You're not stuck. you're not stuck in a path. So if you decide that you want to be a manager, or at least try out being a manager, then you have and it is worth talking to your manager as well. But you can always switch jobs. You can always go back. And same. I actually did move out of a management capacity back into IC role, and found that I really missed that impact. Like you can always lead without authority, but I really miss my part of my responsibilities being growing the team. And so I ended up transitioning back into management, and at the same time making the decision that this is the area that I want to focus on. I had to let one of them go because I found that I couldn't do both well at the same time. Like they're always competing. And one is going to lose out. And so, yeah, that became my focus. And I've transitioned that fulfillment of kind of building something to problem solving about, okay, it's not my responsibility to build this component in this product. It's my responsibility to build this team. And so it's a different thing that I'm building. And it's more people focused, but it's still a challenge and it's still problem solving. You're just problem solving in a different way and problem solving at a different scale. And so, yeah, I would say that if you're not certain, always give it a try, and also don't wait until you feel ready. Like, you don't have to check all the boxes in order to go for the job, because honestly, everyone's still learning. No one shows up to a role perfect, no one. And so that's part of the journey, is growing your skills and growing your confidence, and grow, and how you show up. Like, I'm still learning, as I'm sure everyone is to this day, on how to do their job better, and improving the areas that, that we might not be so good at. But also recognizing that you come with some solid natural skills. If you're a naturally empathetic person, that will serve you so well, so yeah, my journey to being a leader has been a windy path, but I've ended up in a place that I'm very happy with. So
that's awesome. And I love that you touched on the fact that just try it, right? It's not a final thing. If you don't like it, just like with any job, team, company, if you don't like it, you can find another one. Because I think, so many of us, overthink. Like, we think so much till you start to overthink, and then like prematurely talk yourself out of things, right? So you never even got to try that opportunity. So people have made the decision that I'm not going to be a good manager. It's not for me. And they didn't even try it. They could have been an excellent manager. So I love that you touched on that. And then also the notion of, even if you don't feel 100% prepared, to still go and try and do it anyways, right? I remember, take management aside, there was a statistic that was out a few years ago. Hopefully it's changed, but it was like 70-something% of women don't apply for jobs until they know that they can do everything on the job description, right? So if you go through it and you're like, oh man, but I don't have that PhD, man, it's not for me. And, and then when you look at your male counterparts, they're like, man, I can figure it out. And they're applying and getting these jobs, right? So I think the same thing applies when you're thinking of, upward mobility, or you're thinking about just expanding into something new, a new discipline, a new area. You may not have had that management skill before, but you have other things that will make you a great manager. So still try anyway. So awesome answer, ladies. Love that. And, I know that none of us, we get to where we are by ourselves, right? So we have people who can support us both on a personal and professional level. And, we always hear about like the concepts of having mentors. So, curious to hear from you, what was your experience like with kind of getting mentors, right? Because I know that can be a sticky situation, and especially now we're in a virtual world, and people are just kind of hesitant and don't know when to lean in. But can you share just a little bit of tips with us on what your journey was to navigating getting a mentor or mentors, and how do you approach mentorship in general? I know both Tanika and Christine, you all mentioned that in some of your stories. So any of you can kick us off. Whoever gets off mute first can go.
So I can talk about how I met some of my mentors. And I think one of the biggest things about mentoring is I get messages all the time, can you be my mentor? A lot of it is people don't know what they need mentoring in. So being able to identify like, what area of mentorship do you need? I don't have a mentor for one, just overall. I have a mentor in different areas of my life, a mentor for finances, a mentor for professional development, career development. I also have a mentor just that focuses on like personal health and well-being. When we talk, she talks about that a lot. One of my mentors, he always talks to me about how I'm doing in my career, how I'm doing with my well-being overall. And every time he asks very similar questions around, am I making sure it's equally yoked? And I say that to say there are a lot of people that you may come across in your career, and everyone may not be a mentor. Some people actually may be a sponsor and you don't even know it. So there's someone who's been chatting with you and thinks you're really great, you're amazing, and they're advocating for you, but they don't have the capacity to mentor. So sometimes continuing to talk to people and build those relationships. I also call it mentoring up, where there are people who are older than you and you think that, oh, they don't need your help. There's a lot of those relationships that you can build where you're helping someone or they're asking something of you or you're asking something of them, but they don't really know what to do. As an example, my first mentor came from a career fair that I went to, and I ended up landing the role, and that person stuck with me throughout my entire career at that company because I impressed her at that career fair. But I also made sure that where I could give back to her, I did as well. So an example of that, back when Vimeo videos were really popular and they were just coming to light, and I forgot what the platform was before TikTok, and it was just one of those. She didn't know how to use that. She wanted to get the word out about all of the nice programs that she was doing in the community. She wanted to make videos. And I was like, oh, you could just hop on social media, create an Instagram account, do this. And helping her with that was very impactful because it was something that would have took her days to figure out. But me being younger and growing up in the age of social media, it took me a few hours just to get her up and running. So mentoring up where you can, helping them to also, how do we get people to come to a room? What are people looking for in a mentor? How do we get everyone to feel included in something? Sometimes they don't have the knowledge that you may have because you're so close. Like you may be very close to an issue that they're trying to solve from 100 feet up. So mentor up as much as possible. It really does pay dividends. I was always advised, one of my first mentors, I just reached out. I saw an article about her and I asked my career manager, I was like, how do I meet her? He said, send her an email, message her, ping her. And I just wasn't used to that because my internships were all in the tech industry. And you just don't go to a VP and say, hey, I would like to meet you. So I did. I read the article, let her know I read this article. I resonate with so much of what you said. Here's how. I would really like to have a chat with you. I think we have these things in common, and we set it up. We started chatting. We actually ended up setting up a mentoring circle where there were so many other women of color who were reaching out to her as well. And I helped set that up for her, and we still all talk to this day. So one of the things that she always told me is like, as you grow in your career, find a mentor who looks like you and thinks like you, who doesn't look like you and doesn't think like you. You need a diverse slate of mentors. You need a diverse slate of advocates, allies, and sponsors in your career in order for you to successfully grow.
I love that. I love the notion of mentoring up, right? I think people forget that mentoring is a reciprocal relationship, right? You don't want to keep taking from a person without pouring whatever you can in, right? Like most of us have mentors who've probably been around, they're a little bit more seasoned, but there are things that they don't quite know yet, or you can simply just be a sounding board for them. So always try to find a way that you can give back. And I love the diversity in mentorship, right? I love the different people. Like I call it my personal board of directors, right? So, you guys have probably heard the term, like just like any company, you have your finance department, you got, your PR, all of that. It's the same thing when it comes to yourself and your career, right? What one person might be able to help you with in terms of here's how you negotiate your salary and here's how you prep for an interview is probably not the same person that's going to, help you with something else. So looking for everything in one person could possibly be a little unrealistic and you might find yourself getting your feelings hurt, but loved all the points that you touched on, Tanika. And Christine, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so, my story is a little bit different because I actually didn't have any mentors during my career. I had sponsors, but I didn't have mentors because I didn't want to show any weakness.
And can you explain the difference between mentorship and sponsorship for some of the folks tuning in who might be hearing about sponsorship for the first time?
Yeah, so I didn't know they were sponsors at the time, but a sponsor is someone who's advocating on your behalf, right? They recognize your talents. They see what you're contributing to the company. They're always trying to set you up and put you in a position where those skills can shine and where those skills can be leveraged. So a sponsor is someone that really is like a cheerleader, they're not a coach in the way that a mentor is more like a coach, but they're like a cheerleader. They're an advocate for you in rooms where you are not there. they are speaking on your behalf, and they're always elevating you to the rest of the organization. So I had always had sponsors in organizations, but I never necessarily asked for mentorship. And that's because I felt like it was showing a sign of weakness to indicate that I needed help in any area. And so it's so wonderful to hear now, and I mentor a lot of people now, to hear a lot of younger people feel really, really comfortable in asking for help, and really comfortable in seeking advice, and really comfortable in being humble and acknowledging what they don't know. And that's something that if I had to do over, I think I would have leaned more into. Again, when I was coming up, I was the only woman, only Black woman. And it was like that for many, many, many years. And so I was always used to basically, I know everything. You don't have to tell me anything. I'm going to prove myself. And so I never wanted to show any weakness. And so I love the notion of mentorship now, because again, it is people that are going to hold you accountable. They're going to help you grow. They're going to check you when you need to be checked. And they're going to help you get to where you want to go in your career. And so, so my mentorship story, I don't really have one in terms of the mentors that I sought out, but I do think I'm a lesson to those that are on the call to not be afraid to ask for that help, and to not be afraid to ask for that support, because it'll help you in so many facets, help you in so many dimensions. And oh, by the way, it's reciprocal, right? It's bi-directional. So what you're getting from your mentor is getting from you. I learned so much from the people that I talk to, right? Because people do things differently now, right? Like I would have loved to have started when I started and retired after 10 years versus still working after 20 years. So I'm working on that retirement. A couple more years, I'll be retired. But, it took me a lot longer to get there. And maybe if I had been part of mentoring people or part of being mentored, I would have been able to achieve that goal a lot sooner. So I love the notion of mentorship. I love the notion of growth. I love the notion of being humble as a person and being open to basically elevate in many, many different facets and dimensions. And, the older I get, the more I realize I don't know. And there's so much more for me to absorb, and it's always going to be that way, I think, in life. And so I think leveraging mentorship, leveraging coaching, being humble and being open to improvement is the best way to basically navigate this career, especially in tech, which we didn't talk a lot about it being tough. It is really, really, really tough for women, and like doubly so, triply so for Black women. So you need as much of your support structure as possible in order to navigate that.
I love that. I love that, being coachable, and kudos to you, right? I think sponsorship is a thing that many of us crave, right? Like I started getting sponsors a little bit later in career. So it's awesome to know that the journey that you've had, while you didn't know the name to call it at the time, you were getting that support and the recognition and the elevation, which is awesome. So, hopefully, and I'm sure you're probably doing the same for others. So kudos there. And then Anisha, let us know kind of your thoughts here on just really how best to navigate mentorship and getting a mentor, being a good mentee, and all the things that come along with it.
Yeah. So my story is actually slightly different. I will say that I was not a good mentee at the beginning of my relationship.
Okay,
Or sorry, the beginning of my career. Yes. I was not a good mentee just because I just kind of showed up and kind of put the burden of work on the mentor, and you're never going to get what you want from that relationship just because they don't know. They're not responsible for your success. You are the owner for your success. And so earlier on my career, there were mentors, especially in bigger companies, you'll have mentorship programs. But it's real easy to just kind of show up, check the box, kind of talk about, top of mind thing, and end up not really getting any growth from that. Now, as I have found later, as I've moved on in my career and really taken the ownership over what, how I want to grow, the mentoring relationships are much more, rewarding. They're much more fulfilling, and they're much more productive as well, because I'm actually owning how I want to grow. And so if I were to give one piece of advice, and Tanika, I think, touched on this also, is to own that mentorship relationship as the mentee. Like, define what success looks for you, define the goals, define what you want to achieve, and really kind of be the driver of that conversation, and allow the mentor to kind of, pour their knowledge and experience and advice into that mold that you're creating. But it has to be in the shape and form that you want, or else it's not going to be successful. And so that's something that I've learned. And then also, I have found a lot of the best mentorship relationships have come from this tribe, that you created. And it, for me, it was less of actually formally creating this board of directors, but more just, connecting with people who are in similar positions and, have similar goals and have been either where you want to go or are currently in, so that you can, when you have a challenge, that you can go and kind of have a sounding board and have someone to kind of talk through the issues and see how it's done either in other companies or how different personalities would approach. And those have been very, very useful for me. And so I, just always kind of growing your network of people, keeping that tribe of like-minded individuals, and not like-minded in that you all have the same experience, but like-minded in such that you all kind of want to accomplish the same thing, has been very useful. And then the other thing I think is worth noting is we talked about sponsors and mentors, but and touched a little bit on coaching. But coaches for me have been invaluable. Though coaches for me have really helped me grow into like the next level. And the difference between a mentor and a coach, at least for me, is more of an inquiry, as opposed to mentorship is more sharing advice about a specific topic, where coaching is like figuring out your style, having someone help you figure out your style, having someone figure out how you lead, and how you work with people, and what are your core needs, what are the things you absolutely need to work well in an organization, and having that self-knowledge is, to me, absolutely essential for being a good leader. Because if you don't know how to manage yourself, you're going to get into trouble when you're managing other people. And so I've been lucky, because a lot of times I found coaches through recommendations from other people. And honestly, a lot of times they're not cheap. So I've gotten my companies have been, really blessed, I'm lucky that they've agreed to pay for it, but I've also paid for a coach on my own, because it has paid dividends in terms of helping me level up in my career. So
I love that the new realm, right, of adding coaching into when you think of the mentorship, sponsorship realm, right? If you work at a company and they offer this, take it. Even if you feel like you're not ready, take it, because the information that you're going to get is just, you'll respect it, right? But I think what I've learned the most about coaches, other than sponsors and mentors, coaches challenge you, right? There's like, even if you take coaching out of the professional settings, like on the field, right? The goal is you want to win the game, right? Your goal might be, I want to get to this next level, or I want to transition and pivot my career. They're going to challenge you along the way, so you can learn about yourself. You're going to have to face some ugly things about yourself, So I think there's a difference there. So for me, it's like the sponsor is, this is my confidant. This is the person that I know, they know everything about me, what I'm good at. And I can trust them to speak on my behalf when I'm not around, and know that they're going to get all the points right. They might even add some extras, right? And then my mentor, there's usually some form of like relatedness, right? So either they have a similar background, or we almost like come from similar background. Most of my mentors tend to be Black women. Most of my sponsors tend to be white men or white women. And my coaches, they vary. Somebody who's going to push me. So I think there's a benefit in having all of that in your circle. So while the question was specifically on mentorship, I think the real thing is, who's your board, right? Like, who are you reaching out to for what, and at what stage? Because you might be in early stages where you're like, I just need some advice on what to do. Then it's like, okay, I'm stuck, right? I think when you get to like mid-level, the competition gets real. Now you need to have some key stakeholders who are in decision-making roles, ideally, that can speak on your behalf. And then when you think of the executive realm, or you think about even wanting to go into entrepreneurship or whatever, those coaches can come into play. So I loved everybody's touch here. Like nothing was exactly the same, but it was all super beneficial and super useful. Let's talk about the other side of it, right? Because we talked about, having a mentor, but like there's also some benefits, right, in mentoring others, right? So what I have loved to see over the few years, and especially when it comes to Black women, is that we are slowly starting to get rid of the like there can only be me complex, right? Like I've had situations where some Black women feel like they only want to be here and they're not going to help you get to the next level because like you're going to then take my job, right? I think more people are like, I don't want to be the only, so I want to do what I can do to help you get here and even past me, right? Like all my mentees, I'm like, I want you to be able to be my boss one day, right? So for me, I like the pivot that we're making, but would love to hear from each of you just, how was your approach to, dealing with your mentees and kind of what that experience has been for you, especially at your level now? And Anisha, I know you kind of touched on that and when you were speaking, so I'll have you kick us off and then we'll go to Tanika and then Christine.
Yeah, I actually don't know if I have too much more to add in terms of.
Like I told y'all.
Yeah.
Well, more so you can focus more on like the rewards now, right? Because it's like you're a manager and you're also mentoring people. So kind of how has that changed you and kind of pushed you?
Yeah. Let's see. So it's changed me in it's changing me in that it broadens my perspective. It's kind of similar to we talked about before. Like when you manage up, you're always or mentor up, you're always kind of bringing new perspective to the conversation. So for me, it's just having that interaction. I actually love interacting with people. I love helping people grow. And so, when I did touch upon that a little bit before, but I can go into more specifics in terms of, when I mentor somebody, my request for them is to, if they don't already have it, which a lot we tend to not, then let's talk about what you want. Where do you want to be? And then, where are you now? And then let's figure out a couple, 2 to 3 things that you want to focus on, and then turn those into goals, right? And so what do you want to get out of that relationship? I mean, yeah, and then if the person has grown in any of those areas, even a little bit, then I think that's awesome. I call that a win, and that makes me just really happy because I love. I don't know. There's no explanation behind it. I just love growing people and helping them succeed in the way that they want to succeed. And especially for women, and especially for Black women in tech industry, same. Like in terms of, I want everyone to be like the CEO, the CTO, the co-founder, the founder. Like I want everyone to show up as their best shiny selves, and do it in a way that's healthy, and supports themselves and supports the community. And so even just advancing, helping folks advance through my own experience. And that way my experience is not just benefiting me, it's benefiting, the people who I mentor and the people who I talk to as well. And that just makes everything, multiply. And so, yeah, for me, it's just part of why I show up, is helping people to grow. So, yeah.
Nice. So I guess as they're growing, that's how you're succeeding as a mentor, because they're starting to see those growths in their own path.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
All right, Tanika. There we go.
So I have been, I think for me, giving back and mentoring others has always been a part of what I've done. So I mentioned earlier, just helping other people get onto projects or initiatives that they're passionate about. That always ends up being a conversation and speaking with people about their passion, their career, how can they pivot or how can they get to the next level. And as Anisha said, it's a lot of it was being comfortable with sharing my testimony and what my experience was to get there, what hiccups I made along the way as well. And I like what Anisha said about coaches. I had a coach in my career as well. And I learned a lot that around like therapy helps us a lot. So every executive that is in leadership may or may not have done it, but one of the most effective leaders that I've met always told me that that's one of the things that you have to figure out. What are your blockers? Because some of it won't be determined by your sponsor, your advocate, your mentor, or coach. It's something that's deeper. And I started going to therapy, and it also helped me be able to share more about my story, my testimony with others, what I was stumbling with at their age or at their point in their career, and how I got through it. So I really do try to give as much as I can to other people so that they understand, look, I went through this as well, or I may have been in a similar situation, or I may have experienced this, and this is the way that I thought through it. And I try not to, a lot of it is making sure that you're not always giving the answers, but you're helping them think about how they can get through this, or think about viable solutions for how they can solve this. Because if you just give them the answers, when they get to the next roadblock, they're just going to come back to you again. And some of it may not be a situation where they can just pick up the phone and call you. So I always try to mentor, especially through some of the, whether it's people coming through a program or at work, or seeing me online or in a group chat, and just having conversations, making myself available is something that I definitely did a lot in my career, early in my career, because I just wanted to share so much. But as I stepped more into leadership, I learned I actually wasn't giving back as much as I probably could have, because of that coaching and that therapy that I went through. And I think that's one of the most effective ways to lead, is to figure out how can you bring your full 100% self to the conversation, and listening on what problems they're having, but not just give them the solution, help them think through a solution, help them understand how they ended up in this situation so that they don't end up in the same situation the next time, or again in general. So that is just my experience with mentoring, and the reason why I give back as well.
Love that. Love that. And then Christine, you can take us home with this one. And I think just to add and remix it a little bit, you all are at, levels where you're busy and you have your own team. So kind of how do you balance and manage and make sure that you're giving, enough to your mentees? So just throwing that in there.
Yeah, so I think Tanika and Anisha both touched on this a bit. So what I get out of mentoring and how I try to help them is helping to provide clarity. So one of the questions that I always ask people that I mentor is, if you were to define your ideal role, where you would wake up every day and you're super passionate about what you're doing, but you equally feel like you're bringing your best self to the table, to an organization, what does that look like? And it's a really hard question because it requires you to be introspective and really think about what drives you. And the reason why I love to help mentees get to that sense of clarity is because in your career, that is the most important thing. What you are passionate about is going to sustain you throughout your career. It's going to enable you to make all the money that you want to make. It's going to enable you to be happy. It's going to enable you to actually have that balance between what you're offering work and what you're doing in your personal life. Because guess what? Because since work is your passion, they're one and the same. And so what I try to offer mentees are clarity around helping them identify what their core passion is. It is so exhausting to be at a job, no matter how much it pays you, where you can't be your most authentic self, or where you feel like the work that you're doing is drudgery. And so for anyone in any career, you need to really be passionate about what you're doing. Equally, that clarity also helps in some of the questions that we talked about earlier. When you're thinking about whether you want to be a people leader or whether you want to focus on being a specialist in your craft, your passion is going to help drive that decision for you. And having that clarity in the long run, I think is going to enable you to be the happiest. In terms of how that then translates to how all of us can balance what we're doing at work and what we're doing in life, and how that translates to the amount of time that we're able to give to mentors. I just feel personally you have to pay it forward. Now, I didn't always do this earlier in my career because I was just about like, I need to get to the VP level. I need to be a CTO. I need to make as much money as possible. At a certain point, you get to a level where you make enough money. I know that sounds crazy, but you get to a point where, you know, you have enough to like pay your mortgage and travel wherever you want, have whatever cars you want, do all the things in life that you thought money was going to enable you to do. And so once you get to that level of where you've met that goal, you have to look for more. And so for me now, I look for more, and I always make the time to mentor and pay it forward, right? Like I want there to be more of us in this industry. I want us to have a seat at the table. Like, it is not sufficient that I only met one other Black female engineer who was a distributed systems engineer my whole 20-year career. And it was only until recently where I started being exposed to more people that are coming into the industry, right? Like it's not acceptable. So for me, it is part of my job, my personal job, my life goal is to offer that help to others. And so I feel like you have to make the time to mentor, to pay it forward, to really basically enable there to be a difference in this industry. Because, oh, by the way, even though everyone says, oh, you know, you have an advantage now being a Black woman in this industry because everyone wants to hire you. Funny, when I look around, there still aren't any.
They want to get you in the pipeline and on paper, but did you get the job?
Right. And then when you look at levels of leadership in many companies, we're not represented, right? And so, you know, for as much of an advantage as we have, we actually really don't. And so really, I always try to make time to give back because I think it's critical to helping all of us basically achieve what I think we should be achieving in terms of having a seat at the table, directionally, materially changing this industry, and also enabling kind of a different quality of life that's at our fingertips. Again, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be a PhD. It's nice if you are those things in tech. You don't have to be. And you can do quite well and be happy and basically be a part of creating all of these platforms that are literally changing the world, right? Like, we should be part of that economy. Benefiting from that economy is that's changing the world. So yes, I'm super busy, always busy. I don't know how to balance in life, but I try to always make time.
You make the time. You make the time for what matters. We love that. And mentoring and mentorship is something that is super crucial. So thank you, ladies, for sharing the stories. So we're going to wrap up. I have one last question for folks, but I don't know if there are questions out there in viewer attendee land. So production, feel free to type in. Okay, I see the questions here. So I will ask the last question from my end to the finalist to the panelists. Ooh, think about hackathon. If you're in the hackathon and you're here, you might be a finalist. Shameless plug. But no, so to close this out, I'd love to hear maybe just 1 to just 3 tips or gems or advice that you would give to the ladies listening today on how they can really come up in their career, right? So what's the one thing that you would have them do? But if there's 2 other things you want to add to it, what's the take home for them? So we'll do same order as we'll do Anisha, we'll do Tanika, and then Christine.
Okay, I can kick this one off. So I think maybe I have 2 or 3. I would start with a lesson that I'm actually currently learning. This is one of my more recent ones. Yep. Which is ask for what you need. You not only can you, but you 100% should ask for what you need in order to do your job well. And I think I'll speak for myself here, but I think this may be pretty common, is that you feel like you shouldn't need anything. Like, you should just be able to do it perfectly in the most chaotic environment, because tech is chaotic almost at all times. And so with no support, and that's really not true. And so asking, if you need more support from your manager, or if you need more feedback from, a particular person or a particular project, if you need requirements in a certain time, if you need more visibility, if you need a coach or a mentor, but actually like asking for what you need And also kind of like stating it as a need. It's like, I need this in order to do my job well. It doesn't mean you're going to get it, but at least it opens up the conversation. And if they can't meet a really core need, then that's opens to number 2, which is always be willing to move. Like there are plenty of jobs in tech. And if you have tried to make it work, you don't feel like you have to stay. I talk to so many people, especially women, who feel just very tied to a particular position that they kind of hate, because they feel like they shouldn't move or can't, or this is the best opportunity, or some sort of loyalty to the company. And really, there are so many opportunities and a place where you will be valued for your skills and your work and your contributions. So if some place isn't giving you what you need, then make a move, and make a diagonal move. A lot of my best moves, a lot of my kind of like career trajectory has come from making a diagonal move to a different company. And so I would say, if there were 2 things, it would be that don't ask for what you need, and don't feel free, don't be afraid to leave a company. So.
I love that. 2 pieces of crucial advice. Love that, Anisha. And Tanika, what about you? What do you have to offer?
Yeah, I would say 3 things. So I definitely want to echo what Anisha said, but in the sense of, when you hear no, just remember that that's the first no. You're going to hear a lot of no's in your careers. Keep pushing. And that could be a no on the promotion, a no on, can you do this project, or a no in the interview process. But just because you hear that no doesn't mean that you have to completely give up. Continue to push forward for what you want and what you need, and it will come to you. I've heard a lot of no's in my careers, and I just keep pushing forward. That goes into also one of the things that I've found that teams find valuable is everyone is an idea person. Everyone has grand ideas, but when you come to your leadership with an idea that you have vetted out a little bit, where you have thought through some of the questions that they are already probably going to ask you, it does bring the idea that you may be more of a leader than you think, because it shows that you're forward thinking. You're thinking about the ideas, what questions, how it's going to go to market, how it's going to affect this audience or this target segment, what it's going to do for the client, whatever. So a lot of us have really grand ideas. We think about, and I see this a lot when I teach, but we think about, well, I learned this new skill, but how can I do it at work? I don't do it at work. Think about, how would this be applicable? How could this push the company forward a little bit? Take what you've learned and try to apply it in one thing at work, and ask your manager for that leeway to say, like, hey, can I just get an hour a week or 2 hours a week to really work on this? So it's okay to learn, and you may hear no, but keep pushing, bring your ideas forward, try to vet them out as much as possible, because then it takes a lot from your leadership when we are here, or what I've learned from my leaders, they always ask me, well, why is this good? Why should we do it? Why, they're going with that why game. And if I come to them, I always do a 1-pager, but if I come to them with all of the questions someone answer, it shows that I put a lot of thought into this, and they really value that perspective. And then my last just thought is, as you move up in your career, and whether it's as an IC or a people manager, when you walk through that next step, when you get to that next step, when you walk through that next door, just make sure you're leaving it open for other people to come behind you. Make sure you're pulling people behind you. Make sure you're having those conversations. For me, that's in so many different ways, whether it's teaching or learning, offering referrals, talking to my network about what I did to get there. Make sure you leave it open for someone else to come behind you, and you will continue to help what they say is a pipeline problem. You will continue to make sure that we're getting more women, more Black women, more women of color, more Black people in general into these roles by doing so.
Love it. Love it. And Christine, take us away.
Yeah, a lot of great gems already shared. So I don't want to repeat what was already said. I think the biggest thing for me that I've learned in my career and what I could offer to anyone on the call is number one, humble thyself. And really, the humble thyself ties into a lot of what Anisha was talking about, because when you get rid of that kind of armor of being vulnerable and being humble, you're able to ask for what you need, because it means you don't have all the answers, right?
The ego's gone.
The ego's gone, and that is so critical to being successful in any career. Humble thyself, be willing to ask for help, be willing to ask for what you want. That will get you a long way, and also kind of eliminate the stress of you having to carry everything on your shoulders, right? Like, you're part of a team for a reason. That's why we have teams. Not everyone knows everything, and it's okay. You know some things, and other people know other things, and so you're going to be asking for help sometimes, and they're going to be asking for help for sometimes. And so I would impart that to everyone. And then the second part is have patience. So it's funny, Anisha talked about, and I've done this my entire career. I typically have gotten promotions by moving to other companies. I have been promoted within a company, but I always say I have no time for the bullshit. I have no patience to deal with politics. I'm out. I know my value, and you're not valuing me.
Look, so it's not lining up.
I'm going to go somewhere else. In retrospect, so it's been beneficial in my career, but in retrospect, if I would have just been a little bit more patient, I could have gotten to where I wanted to go in those companies. And to Tanika's point, because of the equity that I had built in those companies, would have been in a better position to ultimately create a wider platform for more people like myself to come into the organization and also elevate. So I would say, I know we're all trying to get to the next step. We're all trying to get to Z like tomorrow, but maybe it's okay just to get to B, and then to get to C, and then to get to D, and pause, just have a little patience. Because even though we think, we need to get to the next level, faster, maybe sometimes putting in the equity where you are, sometimes, there are limits to how much BS you're going to deal with, but there's equity that you lose by then going to another company, and that equity loss then prevents you from really making a material change in that company that would be beneficial to more people that we're trying to support and bring into the ecosystem. So that's what I would say and impart to anyone. I say it to all the people I mentor: don't be like me. I know I've been successful, but I've run and said, peace out, and got good jobs. However, when I think about it, I think I maybe should have slowed down a little bit, just a little bit. And I think I would have been able to go further, meaning further in the goal of helping others come along. So that's what I would impart to everyone as we wrap up.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Awesome, ladies. We do have some questions, and we're not done yet. We have some questions from some of the attendees. So I'll call out the questions, and whoever wants to take it, you can take it. So no pressure to have to answer. So the first one is, can you share how to deal with conflicting personalities on your team? For the managers in the house.
Yeah, I can start with that. I'm sorry, my battery was dying, which is why I had to temporarily get off camera. The way you do handle conflicting personalities on the team is that you center everything back to the core goal of what the team is building and the core goal of what we're trying to do as an organization. Basically, you depersonalize it, right? Like, we're here to do a job. We're here to move the business in a certain direction. And if we can anchor all of our conversations and all of our debates around what's in the best interest of what we're doing for the company, that tends to basically reorient people in focusing on the ultimate business goal. And it gets out of the kind of personal kind of animus that can happen with conflicting personalities. I also do try to remind people that we should be respectful of each other. At Netflix, that's one of our core pillars for our culture. And so it's not tolerable to be disrespectful to others, even if you disagree with them. And so when I hear, conflicting personalities, The only conflict that should exist is around maybe debating what we think is in the best interest of the company. But ultimately, if it's in the best interest of the company, then there won't be animus in that debate. There won't be animus in that conflict. And that tends to basically temper down any strong emotions or strong feelings, because it really is objectively about what's doing in the best interest of a company. So that's how I tend to deal with it. Show respect, and let's focus on why we're here. And then we normally get to a good outcome when we do that.
I love that. Bring it back to the bottom line. If I would add to that, I would say, especially for managers, I'm not sure if the person who asked that question was a manager, probably, but there are tests that you can take. There's like a DISC assessment, DISC. And if you have the members of your team take that, they'll know where they fall, right? Some might be an I, some might be a D, some might be a C. And it literally tells you about that personality and that dynamic and who works together and who doesn't work together. So you can use it, and I've done it before, where you leverage that to turn conflict into like a cohesive working environment, right? So Sally is acting like this because the way that she operates is she doesn't like to be micromanager pestered. She's going to get it. She works independent. So, you know, if you give her the project, she's going to do it, but don't expect her to, you know what I mean? So I think that's another thing you can do and invest as a manager, is just really addressing the elephants in the room. Who are we? How do we operate? When are we our best selves? So that way we are aware of each person's personality, but it doesn't affect us in terms of getting the job done. You know, we can work as a unit to get it done. All right. Next question. What's your advice on giving team slash individual reviews? I'm assuming that means, do you do it all up? How do you? I'm going to reframe this as just giving feedback to your team. So whether it be on the team level or individuals, if there's any advice that you all can share.
Hi, so I actually am big on feedback, 360 feedback, and I like to make sure the loop is always closed when giving feedback. So I want to receive feedback, and I make sure that there are opportunities for feedback from my team to happen to me. So I work in a very agile team. So outside of just the one-on-ones, we do feedback loops every 2 weeks as a team. But then in a one-on-one capacity, I do lead the conversation with, you know, always ask them how they are, how they're doing. We may do a little activity at the beginning, but I started with, you know, is there anything in the past 2 weeks that, you know, any feedback you can give me, any conversations. But I'm also really big on real time in the moment feedback as well. So I definitely ask my team what their preferences are. We generally do, when I was at Deloitte, we had something called business chemistry, which is very similar to the DISC assessment. I also use the strengths finders as well with my team to understand what their strengths are and the areas to help me understand what feedback loops and mechanisms would be best for each individual person. I then have that in a document so that I always understand how to communicate with that person. And then it just generally becomes okay, I understand when I communicate with this person, they like very direct feedback. Yeah, they like very direct feedback. They like real-time feedback in the moment. So if something happened in a meeting, you know, they're okay with me putting time on their calendar right after the meeting to discuss something that happened. One of the things I also noticed is, as a manager, you cannot just say, hey, do you have a moment to chat? That
Let them know what it's about.
That scares all of your employees. Even with me if a manager did that to me, what happened? What happened in the meeting? What happened during the sprint? What did I do? Was there something wrong with the code? Did the code not run? Did it not compile? So I'm very direct with, I'm always clear. I try to be transparent with what is it that I want to chat about. Anytime I message them or ask, hey, do you have a moment? I always try to include a moment to chat about the code or a moment to chat about the retro or whatever it is about. And I think that helps a lot when giving feedback. So again, I'm very much 360. You give me feedback, I give you feedback, real time in the moment as well.
Love that. The next question here and I think this probably came up between Anisha and Christine in your stories, just based on the way the question is here. But no pressure to answer it. But I'm just saying. So what are some of the signs that people can look for to know that your company is willing to support your move to the next level? So I guess, what's the sign that says, okay, be patient because it's going to happen eventually? Or, how would you know then, what, actually it's time to go? So what are some of the writings on the walls that maybe it's not as easy to identify? It's not as simple as your manager telling you like, next quarter, I got you. What are some other things that might be an inclination that you should stay because, growth is going to happen, or you should probably leave? Anybody can answer.
Yeah, I can start. Although I'd be very curious to hear what Christine says in terms of, because I think we're a little bit on the opposite, not quite opposite, but because I agree there is some patience that's required. But for the signs that I use to kind of determine like whether it's time to go or not are more in terms of, is the company and what the company is doing aligning with my values? That's a real thing. And is it aligning with where I want my career to go? And then in terms of the signs that if your company is willing to invest in you, that does take it's not something that you can kind of determine, I think, like over a 2-week period. I'm a planner. I tend to like to come up with plans with my manager. So first of all, are they willing to engage in the conversation of me moving in the direction that I want to go? And it's not just, but actually like putting some thought behind it and committing to working to where I want to go. And if they say no, to Tanika's point, then sometimes it will say no or not now, and that's totally fine. But eventually, especially if it's something that's important to me, we need to come up with a way to get me to where I want to go. And then once we have a plan in place, and all good plans have milestones in them. So if we are hitting those milestones and I'm still not kind of seeing any kind of like progress or action, then it's, if it's more talk and less action from their end, then it's time to leave. And part of this is, I mentioned the core needs before. And I think that will, to me, that kind of comes up because we're human and, all humans have kind of like core needs. If it's something that you are willing to budge on, then that's okay, right? Then maybe you're willing to compromise. But there are things that everyone has that is a requirement for them to show up and be their most productive self and be their 100%. And I think identifying what those are for you, and being real. If the company, after a conversation or 3 or 4, depending what your timeline is, and they're still not willing to meet, and that's a sign to meet that need, then it's a sign it's time to go. And look for something else.
I love that.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that. I mean, actions have to match words, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very, very clear when you craft a plan and you're marching towards something, if your sponsor, if your boss is basically meeting those words and those promises with actions, right? Do you still have a seat at the table? Right? Are you still making meaning? Are you still part of making key decisions? Are you still working on projects that are high profile for the company, right? Like if you are still having a seat at the table, if you're still working on things that are important to the company's bottom line, if the actions of your leaders, your partners, your sponsors are matching their words, and they're just saying, we need a bit more time, then you can basically give them the benefit of the doubt because there's a track record of them being transparent and truthful with you. When there is not that trust, when it's broken, when there is continual promises not met by action, when there is a diminishing of your value to the company by not having a seat at the table, not being able to make key decisions, not being able to work on high profile projects, then I think it's very clear. They're telling you the answer. They're telling you that there is not a place for you here. It doesn't mean that you're not valuable. It just means in their current construction, they feel like they have what they need in order to be successful. And that doesn't include you. So that should be a really clear sign that you should move on. So I think it basically says the same thing that Anisha is saying, but really trust your gut and trust the actions and trust what somebody is telling you and what they are doing, and make sure that those two things align. And that's true for anything in life, right? If you had a friend that continually said one thing and did another, you'd be like, yeah, maybe Yeah, to be friends, right? Like, yeah, I don't trust you, right? And so it's the same thing in a work situation as well.
I love that. So we only have 2 minutes, but there's 2 more questions left. So we'll call this lightning round. So I'll go through the 2 questions and then maybe we'll do 1 answer each. But I say all that to say before we close out with the questions, feel free to reach out, keep in contact on LinkedIn and all of that in case you didn't get a question asked. So the first one is, what advice do you have for people who feel stuck and don't know? I think this one was answered actually in the last 2 questions. So I'm going to skip to this one that says, what does slowing down look like versus going too fast? So who would like to take us out with that one? I feel like it was low-key also answered, but if someone wants to add anything, no pressure. You've got 46 seconds.
I can answer that. So in my career, especially early in my career, a lot of people ask me, how did I have time? And I still get this question today, like, how do you have time? You definitely have to have more than 24 hours in your day. So slowing down did not happen for me probably until I reached when I entered into the tech industry, and I realized, oh my gosh, I have so much more time. The reason is, when I was in consulting, I started my career, I was on go mode. I just entered my career. So I wanted to get all of the certifications. I wanted to learn everything. And that meant I definitely worked 9 to 5, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or 3 to 4 days out of the week, I definitely took time after work to learn the new project, read up on the industry, learn the client a little bit more, learn a new skill. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And right after that, I saw a lot of things happen in my career, and I was getting a lot of awards and accolades for that. And I just kept going with learning another skill, getting certifications, and starting my master's. And so that put me on a very fast track, and I learned a lot very fast. But what happened is, one of the things that I learned when I left consulting is, wow, I learned a lot so fast. And people say, well, in consulting, you probably have 10 years of experience in what you did in 5. And that's because you pick up so many skills from working with so many different clients, and you're just taught to be a continuous learner. So I feel like now I reached that point where I was cruising, where I knew the thing and I was just building products, and I slowed down a bit. And it took a lot for me to say, this is okay, because I was in that space where I was like, I feel like I'm not doing something, but you do have to slow down because you will burn out. You will reach that point where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm tired. I'm just exhausted. I don't know what to do. And you don't want that to end up affecting your work. So going too fast could be continuing on that path where you're just spending 3 to 4 hours a night working, and not necessarily working on client work, but working on your growth and development, which then goes back to your work. But you have to pause and reflect and take that time, because you will burn out. And that's just what I wanted to tell people all the time. Tell people, because I get the question all the time, like, how do you make the time, or how do you have so much time in the day? It's really prioritization. Like, what are you prioritizing right now for what you want 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now?
Gotcha. Thank you. And thank you to the rest of the ladies. Thank you to this panel. You ladies were awesome. I'm leaving with a lot of gems. So I know that the attendees have a lot of things that they're taking away as well. Like I mentioned before, make sure you stay connected to us. Make sure you stay connected to We Build Black, and make sure you stay connected to Linkleaf. Remember, in the beginning, they got jobs, y'all. So we've learned a lot about what you need to do. We want to see you climb that ladder. So make sure that you follow them and see the openings that they have, and stay connected to us. We have another session coming up on Friday. We're going to be talking about moving forward and just being forward thinking, what's happening next. So thank you all again for joining the Mavens IO Black Women in Technology Conference, and we will see you again on Friday. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.